And what about multi-strain versus single strain, or multi-species versus single species?
Yeah, I think if you're looking for a specific benefit, if you're in the context of like an anti-inflammatory effect, a metabolic effect, I think it's single strain. I think that, let's say, for antibiotic-associated conditions like C. difficile or vaginosis, that it may, in fact, a multi-strain product may be more appropriate. Like, let's say for C. diff, what you're looking to do is, prevent it from, taking over, and it's normally an antibiotic insult that kicks it off. So by replenishing the diversity or introducing a kind of a competitive inhibition, a multi-strain may work in that circumstances. But I think that probably has to be played out a little bit more.
Yeah, there is an assumption that multi-strain is that the different strains are additive or in some way synergistic. The opposite could be the case.
Right.
In fact, it might well be that some strains will inhibit each other. So that's another point that Melissa makes, that therefore we definitely need to know the contents and exactly the contents in a product, because it allows someone to check, could they be competitive? And I agree with Eileen that if your goal is to flood the system and compete against pathogens, then that probably makes some sense to have a number of different strains. But if your goal is to actually upregulate the immune system, or the regulatory cells in the immune system, to downplay inflammation, in other words, to mimic what the normal microbiota does, then the idea of multi-strain doesn't make any sense. You need to know exactly what each strain does, and one may be fine.
And one may be better than the...
Exactly.
I think in the multi-strain products, I think the same principles apply, in that it's not you need to know what the strains are, you need to know what they're doing. As Fergus said, you need to know how they're interacting, because sometimes, like strains, they don't like each other. So they need to be compatible and in the gut. So in my mind, the multi-strain products are more complicated, and it's even more difficult to understand what the mechanism, what the real mechanism is. But the same principles need to apply to the multi-strain products.
I think the analogy for the lay public with tablets, if the blue pills are good for your blood pressure, that doesn't mean you should take the blue and the green and the red ones, that they'll all just do fine.
You're right.
It's not true.
Analogy.
Yeah.